Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 980 of the Juicebox Podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Today I'll be speaking with Chrysten. She's a 29-year-old type 1, diagnosed at age 7. She's also an academic advisor who works with students who transition from high school to college. We're going to talk about her job and her life, how she was diagnosed, what her experiences were, and everything else. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Would you like to save 40% off your entire order at CozyEarth.com? That'll be easy to do. Just use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. If you'd like to save on AG1, use my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox. And of course, don't miss the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast. It's called Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. It has over 40,000 members, and there are endless conversations happening right now that you'll be interested in. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Get yourself the Omnipod DASH or the automated Omnipod 5 with my link. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Go take that Omnipod for a test drive. The podcast is also sponsored today by Dexcom, makers of the Dexcom G7 and Dexcom G6. Dexcom.com/juicebox. You can wear the same exact Dexcom that my daughter wears, the G7, or you can get yourself the G6 at Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com.
So I'm Chrysten, I'm 29, and I am currently talking to Scott.
Chrysten, you're 29. You look like you're 12 in this photo.
Listen.
Is that what you look like?
That my whole... Yeah, I mean, that picture, I think I was like 25.
Really?
So, yeah.
If you told me you were 18 in that photo, I would 100% believe you.
I know. This is the ongoing joke. Actually, we took headshots for my job like a few years ago, and this woman in my department was like, "Are you serious? That's your photo? You look like you're in grade school." And I was like, "Thanks." Love that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about my face. I don't know what to tell you.
Does it hurt you at work? Can you tell me what kind of work you do without telling me where you work?
Oh, yeah. I'm a counselor, like an academic advisor. Does it hurt me? No, I don't think so. I mean, sometimes I'll get students who... I do have some adult students, so sometimes they're older than me. So that's can be kind of awkward, but we kind of roll with it. No, I wouldn't say it hurts me.
Okay.
It's fine.
Good.
Yeah.
My wife was in a position of, I don't know how to say this. She managed people. I was going to say a position of power, which is true, but she managed people at a young age and had a razor sharp understanding of the business. And she said she would sit in meetings sometimes with people who were twice her age, and they would look at her like, why is this kid telling me what I have to do? And she said there were people who it rubbed up wrong against. That's why I was wondering.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if and when if I ever moved into a management position, I know it would be that. I'm sure that would happen to me. But as of right now, no, it's fine.
Right now, it's not a problem.
Yeah, right now. Well, that's a future problem.
Yeah. So
we'll deal with it then.
Well, look at you, see, you being hopeful that you're going to continue to look like you're 12 for your whole life.
This has always been how I am. What am I saying? I've always looked younger than I am, so I'm just like, it is what it is at this point. Mm-hmm. So everyone keeps telling me when I'm older, I'll like it, but...
Well, I was going to say the same thing. I can get away with way younger than I am, so it is nice for now. It's all about keeping your hair dark, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, and keeping the wrinkles off your face. That's pretty much the whole thing.
Well, so. I'll try. I noticed though on Zoom now when I'm, it shows you your camera and I have like a line in between my eyes and I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting old. It's rough.
Yeah. I have squinty eyes already. I hate that. Yeah, I would There's definitely a world where I would I would do some light surgery if it was offered.
A little Botox here and there.
If my eyes would appear open, that would be nice. And then I'd probably do some liposuction in a couple of spots. I think that'd be it.
Oh, me too. I'd be so down with liposuction.
Right?
But who's got money for that?
My wife's like, I'm coming up. I don't need you to come up. I need the document.
Yeah, I need an email.
Oh, I need the doc, not you.
Well, don't ask her how she feels about liposuction.
Oh, please. She doesn't care about me.
No? Okay. She won't be insulted.
She'd be like, whatever. We don't have money for that. Stop it. And we do seem to have money for the things she likes, though, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, well, that's how it works.
Okay. So why did you want to, this one's specific. So let me ask why you wanted to come on the show.
So I work with students who transition from high school to college, and over again, I think when I emailed you was probably in the middle of our summer program. And over again, I have students who talk about how they had a 504 in high school and they want to be normal in college, right? And so I after the 25th conversation I've had about this, I was like, you know what? That's such a thing for diabetes as well. And it pops up in the Facebook group from time to time about that transition from high school to college. And I also did it myself as a diabetic. So I don't know. That's why.
That makes sense. It's a great topic, honestly. What do you think they mean by normal?
Yeah. So a lot of times I think they want to leave their diagnosis behind. So I have students with, a whole range of reasons as to why they'd have a 504. So a lot of like ADHD, and I've had some students on the autism spectrum or learning disabilities, things like that. And I think they want to get rid of that known fact about themselves, if that makes sense. So like, how in high school, every teacher knows what your diagnosis is, and they want to get rid of that when they go to college and kind of start fresh is their idea, I think.
Is it fair to say they just want to get rid of their normal?
Yeah.
A fresh start. So people not knowing, but is that conducive though to what? No, not at all. Right. Like you might, because if you head in there, I think I'm right about this. If you head into college and you have not set anything up, it's hard to set it up later.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly. And that's why, as this happened 500,000 times, that's why I reached out to you. Because I was like, and I remember myself saying these words when I was in high school and going to college. So that's why I was like, okay, maybe this is like a larger issue. But to your point, yes. So what happens is they won't get their accommodations. They often will crash and burn in the fall, and they'll reach out to me in like, November and be like, so I think I need these accommodations. I'm like, yep. So then we have to kind of rush to get them. And by then, a lot of times we can't get them until the spring.
You work with kids who have all kinds of needs, not just diabetes.
Yeah, I actually work for a program for economically disadvantaged students. And so it's a really broad spectrum of students that come through. But I can't give you a number, but a decent amount who have had disabilities in the past or have disabilities and want to get accommodations in college.
What does economic disadvantages, how do you help those people?
So the program I work for, it really, I think the biggest focus is assigning them to a counselor. So myself and the other counselors in the program. And we have a smaller caseload. So we can assist them more often than like a general advisor, because their caseload is like crazy. It's like 1 to 700, whereas we are like 130-ish, I would say. And so we can assist them with whatever it is they need to transition. A lot of it is like helping them with college jargon. So, how people throw around words like, the registrar's office and that kind of stuff, right?
And you're like, so what the hell does that mean?
Right, exactly. So we help them with a lot of that, a lot of like talking about how college is different than high school. Sometimes we'll connect them to services, like if they need like additional support, like, we had kids with like housing insecurity, food insecurity, stuff like that. Not that often, but that does happen too. Okay. So stuff like that. it's great work. I like it.
Okay, so you set those people up to understand the system they're getting involved in, how to navigate it, and how to show them what's available to them and how they can ask for it.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. And there's not a lot of difference between that and medical, honestly, right? Because it's still the same. Like, we didn't know right away when Arden went to college. We were like, well, I mean, somebody probably has to know, but
right.
What do you do? And so if you're not contacted by the school, what do? You contact them and ask if there's, like, who would I contact at the college to ask if I'm not hearing from them on it? Now let's talk about the Dexcom G7. The Dexcom G7 is a small and wearable continuous glucose monitoring system. It sends real-time glucose readings to your Dexcom G7 app or the Dexcom receiver. Use my link, dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more and get started today. You will be able to effortlessly see your glucose levels and where they're headed. This way you'll be able to make better decisions about food, insulin, and activity. Once you're able to see the impact that those variables have on blood sugar, you'll begin to make more purposeful decisions and have better outcomes. My daughter has been wearing a Dexcom product for so many years, I don't even remember when she started. But today she wears the Dexcom G7, and it is small and easy, and oh my goodness, are you going to love it. Dexcom.com/juicebox. You can head there now and click on the button that will get you your free benefits check, or just hit that other button that says get started. When you use my links, you're supporting the production of the podcast. Dexcom.com/juicebox. My daughter Arden has been wearing an Omnipod since she was 4 years old, and she is now 19. That is every day wearing an Omnipod for the last 15 years. I think what we love most about Omnipod is that it doesn't have any tubing. But, I don't know. Is that the thing you love most about it? You don't have to take it off to swim or bathe. You can leave it on for activity and exercise. It's small. It's so easy to put on, right? To fill it and to put it on it takes us no time at all. I guess it's hard to figure out what my favorite thing about Omnipod is. I guess I'll just say that my daughter loves it. It's easy and it's worked for her for so many years. It's just such a friend in all of this. Omnipod.com/juicebox. You can check your coverage there for your insurance, or take a test drive, right? Would you like a free trial of the Omnipod? You can do that there as well. And you can just get started. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Now you have a decision to make. Do you want the Omnipod DASH, which is an insulin pump where you make all the decisions? Or do you want the Omnipod 5? Now, the Omnipod 5 is the first and only tubeless automated insulin delivery system to integrate with the Dexcom G6. And it's available for people with type 1 diabetes ages 2 years and older. It features Smart Adjust technology, and it's going to help you to protect against highs and lows both day and night. That's an algorithm-based system, making decisions about insulin, giving it and taking it away. It's pretty damn cool. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you use those links, you're supporting the production of the podcast and helping to keep it free and plentiful.
Right, exactly. So every school it's sometimes now called accessibility services, or disability services. And those are the people who would process accommodations for college students.
Okay, so we contact them and say, hey, listen, I have type 1 diabetes and I'm on my way to college. Are there two different people? Are there the people who have accommodations set up already and want to try to transfer them? And there are, I imagine, people too who made it through high school without accommodations and are now thinking they might be more necessary in college?
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely easier if you had like a 504 plan or a medical plan in high school, or an IEP if it's not diabetes, right? But then, yes, there are people or you could even get diagnosed with something in college.
Right.
Or even there's like, temporary stuff, like you get a concussion or an injury or something like that. So yeah, so there's two different pathways, I suppose, to go there.
Do people take advantage of this?
Yes and no. It really depends from what I understand. And I'm also talking about this in the context of working at one university, right?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I think it really depends on the school. I don't really have that answer. So I don't work for disability services specifically. Like I'm more of like I work for the program I was talking about. So I don't have too much information on like what that looks like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, but you have type 1, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How old were you when you were diagnosed?
7.
Wow. And now we know, of course, you're 12 now from your photo. So
I'm 12.
Yeah, you've had it for 5 years.
Yes.
So you were diagnosed at 7. Did you have accommodations in school?
No, I had a medical plan of some sort in high school, I believe. But no, I never had a 504, which is interesting.
Would you have an IEP?
No.
No. Did you just have a note from your doctor?
I guess
you don't
so.
know.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
see, this is a good point though, because you had it and you don't know what it is.
Yep.
Right. And so when you go to college, did you try to take it with you?
I did actually, because my mother forced me.
Okay. More interesting. You didn't want to?
I did not want to, no.
Because you wanted to be normal and start over again.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I went to Penn State, and I loved the idea of, you know how people hate the idea of like being just a number? I thought that was great. I was like, yeah, no one bother me. that was my perspective. So I was like, no, I don't want to bring this up. I'm just going to school. Like, leave me alone, you know?
So you like the idea of going to a big school in the middle of nowhere and just existing for 4 years and doing your thing.
Yep. I love anonymity. Like I was all about the lecture hall classes. I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's do it.
I have a side note question. Why do people who have gone to Penn State act like that's where Jesus lives?
Because it is. I'm in the cult. I am very okay with it. It's the best place on the planet.
Yeah, I don't know. The flags that fly in front of people's houses a decade after their children have graduated, their babies running around in little Penn State outfits. I mean, yeah, all that stuff went on with the football team. Didn't bother people at all. They're like, whatever, Penn State, baby. I was like,
oh yeah, no, nobody cares. It's there's something about it. I don't know. It's like its own little. I don't know.
I think you said community. Cult already. I think you were there when you said cult.
I meant cult.
Yeah.
I honestly meant cult. But yeah, I remember my dad being like, "Are you going to college or are you going to Disney World? Like, what is this?" And I was like, "Okay, it's amazing." So whatever.
Because you were having so much fun?
I loved it. Yeah, it was amazing. I was so excited to go there. Like, it was awesome.
So how did it go being just a number? Like, how did that change your diabetes world?
I loved it, quite honestly. How did it change my diabetes world? So for me, I'm very, I was always very anxious, quiet, keep to myself kind of person when I was young, which you wouldn't think now as I like, don't shut up as I'm talking to you. But for me, it was always very hard to advocate for myself. So like, I would be the type where if I was low, I would just take the test and not do well and not say anything about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I went to college, that stuck with me. I think I learned, I definitely learned as I went through to stop doing that though.
So it's a momentary thing then. It's you wanted to try it, then you tried it and you're like, this is not valuable for me. I'll stop doing this. Yeah,
essentially. After it affected my grades negatively so many times. And I was always a good student. I was like school. Mm-hmm. It started to, I was like, all right, I got to stop doing this. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Keep talking.
No, I was going to say, I was thinking of like one time, for example, I had a Medtronic pump at the time. I had that for like a year. And then I was like, after it got caught on door handles, I was over it. But so I had a Medtronic pump. Something happened with it where I think it wasn't connected or something. And I was like 300. And this was before I had a Dexcom. So I didn't realize until I checked my number and I was like, oh, yikes. And I was about to go to an exam, but I had to go back to my apartment and get change the cartridge or whatever. And so I actually, ironically, ran into the TA as I was walking to my apartment. And I was like, hey, I'm in the class UTA for. I know we have an exam. I've explained the insulin pump thing. I was like, I just got to run to my house and then come back. And then, so I'm going to be a little late to this exam. And she was so nice. She was like, yeah, no, don't even worry about it. She was like, I can let the professor know you could take it another time when you're feeling better. And I went and took the exam with a 300 blood sugar. Like, why? For what purpose? You know what I mean? I would do things like that a lot.
Right.
You know?
Is it fair to compare that feeling that you had to when a person makes a drastic change, cutting their hair or changing their clothes, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, were you just looking for a shift? Like, let me get away from this diabetes thing for a minute.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, cause you had it for like 11 years before you went to college ish. So how would you describe living with diabetes as a kid and then into high school? Did it go like easily, or is it a bad memory?
So when I started, it was back in like, what is it? MPH and the other one?
Regular. Yeah.
And you would like mix them in the one injection or whatever. And you had to like eat 45 carbs a meal at specific times, and then 15 carb snacks, 3 a day. I mean, you couldn't deviate from that. So that sucked. And from there, I switched to Lantus. That was a big deal to switch to Lantus when I was like 10. And I would say around like 11 or 12, I really did everything myself. My parents didn't help me with it, which is interesting. I think I totally lost track of your question. I'm sorry.
Well, don't worry.
Tell me your question.
I'm going to just ask another question. I'll get you back to it.
Okay.
Why was it interesting that they stopped helping?
Why is it interesting? I mean, I'm thinking of a time like I was at a diabetes educator appointment, and my mom was like, oh yeah, I was like 12. And my mom was like, oh yeah, she does everything herself. I don't know. I have no idea what she does. She just does it. And the educator was like, she's 12. I think she probably needs some help. and I was just like, okay, so I guess.
Did you need help?
Yeah.
What was your A1C like about?
I want to say I floated in the 8s.
Yeah. So you needed help.
I needed help, definitely.
And let's delve into your parents for a second. Were your parents like hands-off people, or were they just under the impression that it was going okay because you were alive?
My parents are not very nice people, honestly. So they were.
Wait, what?
I'm serious. They're just not very nice.
Wait, do you have a relationship with them?
Yeah.
Yeah? That didn't sound exciting.
Yeah.
But you go on Christmas, like that kind of stuff?
It's kind of, yeah, they're just not very nice. They're very self-absorbed kind of people, Okay. And so I think that especially with my mother was so anxious. I don't think she could handle the diabetes, honestly. Like she was just like, this is another thing, I can't deal with this. So I did it. So I kind of had to raise myself kind of childhood,
I see. Okay. I have go ahead.
No, I was going to say, not that I intended to delve into that. Sorry.
No.
Kind of irrelevant, I guess.
No, I just have to tell you that I don't have a number on this, but it's a big number for when we get to it in the conversation where people are like, yeah, I just did it by myself. And I'm like, that's weird. Did your parents not help you? And no one just comes out and says, yeah, no, my parents just bailed on me. Like no one ever is honest about it. Everyone defends their parents no matter what. It's when they're being recorded. It's really interesting. By the way, it's interesting how many people stop recording and go, yeah, I couldn't tell you about my mom because it would break her heart. And I'm like, oh, okay. But you were just like, no, they're not nice.
Hopefully they never find this. It's fine.
Are you nice?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Because I mean, that was pretty honest. Some might say not nice what you said.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I appreciate it. Listen, I appreciate it. If your 12-year-old has a massive medical condition that includes them using a medication that if they use it incorrectly could kill them, and your idea is, she seems to be doing all right. I mean, I'm not here to judge anybody, but if you put me in the situation where I was, I'd be judgmental of that. So, and so I appreciate you saying that. That's all. Okay, so now I have some and I'm also trying to give people context for why their kids might want to forget about their diabetes when they get to college. And not only diabetes, it's to be said that it is not uncommon for a kid to go to college and try to find a way to be unconscious.
Yeah. And, I think the whole thing actually, I'm glad we talked about that because I think it gives a good context to where I was when I went to college, I wanted to really start over. Like, I was like, I'm getting away from my parents and the whole shebang. And, so I think that's why, I don't know, that's why I went in that direction. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Listen, this isn't for this conversation, but I'm happy to have this conversation with somebody else at some point. I don't want to be over dramatic. Hold on a second. I think what I was going to say was like a little too over dramatic, but it's a crisis that after spending 17 years with their parents, that a number of children's focus, they say it's about a coin flip, about half kids that go to college are going to drink. By the way, half of them don't. It's interesting, like how the numbers fall.
That's interesting.
Right? But it's 1 in 2 people is thinking, I need to go somewhere and get really high or really drunk and get away from my own thoughts. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a cultural failing if 1 in 2 people feel that way.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting how it doesn't get talked about, because from people who are not drinkers, using drinking as an example, they don't say anything. They're just like, oh, I just hope my kid goes to college and doesn't fall into that. I'm just going to hope for that. The other half of people are oftentimes almost proud of it. Like, oh, they're going to go to school and get blackout drunk. I'm like, is that not an issue for you? Like, no, it's not. It absolutely isn't. So then there's this competing culture, because the kid who doesn't drink also probably has some stress and anxiety and things didn't go right for them either. And those kids have no outlet. And then the other ones are using an outlet that's so big that it can become a way of life too. Like, we don't talk about the fact that in society, most people are anesthetized in one way or another. Like,
that's true.
Yeah. We just don't talk about it from anyway.
Or the ramifications of that. No, I think that's a good point. And the ramifications of that, like socially and mentally and all these different things. Absolutely. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, from from a person, I don't know, who's an adult, who's just, using wine to get through the day, or, I mean, what did the Rolling Stones sang about it in the 60s, right? Like, just a pill, just to take the edge off, and right up to like, I have no trouble with you smoking weed, but if you're smoking weed all day long because you can't function, I mean, there's something's wrong. Like, right? Like, you should be able to get through life without being altered, sometimes at the very least. Anyway, and then these kids head off, and 1 in 2 kids, this coin flip of who you are, some of them are going to have diabetes. And so some of you are going to send your diabetic child off to college, and that kid's going to fall face first into a keg. The only way they're going to know, my expectation, to safeguard themselves from a low blood sugar is going to be to keep their blood sugar high. I mean, that's what I get from conversations I have with adults who are formerly children with diabetes. So it goes one, or the other people are just like, I don't drink, it doesn't matter. So, anyway, that was a bit of a soapbox for me. I did not mean to do that.
Oh, that's fine.
For you. What about the people listening? They're like, shut up, man. I like to drink.
No, it's all good.
You should have grown up with my parents. You'd drink too. By the way, I did grow up with your parents, and I have compassion. Okay. So what I wanted to tell you was that when Arden went off to college, we had a nice experience where the school, designated a person to speak to us about diabetes. We had a video chat between the 3 of us, my wife, myself, and Arden. And the first thing you notice is you're talking to somebody who, generally speaking, big surprise, doesn't understand type 1 diabetes.
Exactly.
So you have to begin to educate them without scaring them, right? And so we were doing that on the call. And I said at some point during the phone call, I said, I don't know if you can tell, like, we're very uncomfortable with this. And she's like, how so? I said, we don't want to be doing this. I said, I don't think Arden needs any of this. But if she does, I don't want for it not to be there. Right?
And that's how I wrap my head around it too. Like, it's like there's just always that one, I'm trying to think of a nice word and not curse. There's always that one professor, right? There's always that one person who's going to make your life miserable for no apparent reason. And so it's really like a catch-all to make sure that you're covered is really how I think of it. But does she, like, I mean, I would imagine Arden doesn't really need to use it often, but it's just there just in case.
I don't think I'm going to go over with you what we did.
Okay.
But I don't think, with the exception of the fact that she has a tiny little personal refrigerator and smaller than you're imagining. Like it would only fit maybe like 3 softballs inside of it. It's very small.
Oh, geez.
And that's what she has her insulin in. And you had to have an accommodation to have a refrigerator.
Right.
And that was a bit of a lift because people didn't ask for it generally. So it was, when you got to the person, they were like, I don't know if I'll get this done, but I can't just say yes to it now. It's funny because what you just tried to artfully say a minute ago, I actually just said on the call. I said to
really?
Yeah, I told the person, I was like, look, this is all just here in case one of these professors is an asshole.
That was the word I was going to use, but I was trying not to curse.
Well, you're very nice. I mean, not to your parents, but to me. And I appreciate that. So, but I mean, in truth, that's what it is, right? Like it's a get out of jail free card in a world where you shouldn't get put in jail, but somebody might do it to you. So you get to whip it out and go, ha, you can't do that. Yep. I have diabetes. So
exactly.
But you don't want to say it. Like now, the person we spoke to said there are people who wear it like, I don't know, like they wear it right on their chest. Every time you see them, you're going to hear, I have this and I am allowed. And she's like, look, we accommodate those people too. And I said, you're never going to hear my daughter say she has diabetes. Like there's, unless she's passing out and she says, get me a juice, I have diabetes. Like that. And right. Even then we've learned people don't even know what that means. So, anyway, so my wife, and I want to give my wife full credit because let's be clear, this is well written and organized, which means I had nothing to do with it. But she broke it down into categories for the school. So the first category she has is absence, lateness, and scheduling, course registration, housing, and medical self-treatment, nutrition, proximity to class and food, supplies, and Wi-Fi accessibility. That's how we have it broken down.
Okay.
What do you see anything that's missing there?
No, not at all.
Okay. So what we first explained it. So absence, lateness, schedule. My wife has blood glucose levels are impacted by many variables, including but not limited to food, hormones, adrenaline, temperature, physical activity, illness, and stress. Each type 1 diabetes person responds differently to these variables. Arden may require flexibility around class attendance due to type 1, because of things like prolonged overnight hypoglycemia, emergency room visits, hospitalization for DKA, or a hypoglycemic episode. So we listed out everything that could happen to her, but none of it do we actually expect to happen. Right. And then she says, this is the accommodation we're looking for. Excused absences and latenesses for diabetes-related reasons. Ability to access class notes during excused absences and latenesses for diabetes-related reasons, extra time or ability to reschedule exams, projects, due dates if ability to complete the thing is impacted by hypo or hyperglycemia. And so that's just one category that my wife laid out. And we went through for all of them. She explained how course registration could be important, just things like class time. It would be great for Arden not to have to be in a classroom at 8 a.m. That kind of stuff. And blah, 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 housing, that she needs a refrigerator. I can't read this whole thing. I could read this whole thing to you, but I'm not going to, I could make it available online, to be honest with you, but,
yeah, that might be helpful.
Yeah. And so we went through all that. And then the response we got back from the school was very easy. Like everything was easy after that because, and part of me thinks it's because we made that person's life easier. We explained it to them. We said, look, we're not here to like hold you up. You know, we're not asking for she doesn't need a puppy or a Ferris wheel, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And as a matter of fact, she's probably never going to mention this to anybody. But Arden said that in her first days of every class she has, someone pulls her aside and says, I got your accommodations. But she said one professor pulled her aside and said, hey, look, we're not supposed to ask you what's up, but what's up with you?
Oh my God.
And Arden goes, oh, I have type 1 diabetes. And the woman goes, oh, really? That it? And she goes, yeah. She goes, that's cool. And so Arden goes, do you want to know anything? And she's like, no. She's like, if you need something, just do it. It's fine. Like she had a real like adult conversation. Right. And what Arden realized is with this person, with this specific professor, I just need to live my life. And as long as I don't take advantage of this somehow, this person's going to have no problem at all. And then the teacher goes like, I appreciate you sharing it with me. She goes, some kids just have really like scary issues and they don't tell us exactly all the time. Yeah. She's like, I want to know what to be ready for. Arden goes, look, the worst that might happen. Arden said the worst that I can imagine happening is that if one of my devices stops working, I might have to leave. Mm-hmm. And she's like, and from a safety standpoint, my blood sugar could get low and I might need help. And like drinking juice, she's like, I have juice with me. But even some of the things that we started to set up, we found ways around. Like, you know, the campus is pretty spread out in this little city. Mm-hmm. And we were like, well, what does she do if she's across town and her pump site fails or something like that happens, right? And so we started talking to the school and we're like, well, could we put insulin like in different locations? And the woman's like, I don't think so. Like, she's like, you mean you would need refrigeration in a building and you'd want to put a medication in there? And I'm like, I don't see how we could do that either. And what they landed on for that is that Arden basically has like a super Uber card. She's got a phone number and she can call campus security and they'll whisk her back to her room, wait for her and take her back to class.
That's so cool. What a good idea.
Yeah. If that ever happens, which by the way, it's likely never going to happen. And even Arden said, like, if that really happened, she goes, I wouldn't do that first. She goes, I would first see if like my roommate could just bring me like a pump and some insulin or something like that.
Right.
In the beginning, for like the first 2 weeks, she carried it with her. Mm-hmm. She took like a cold thing. She put ice in it. She put her insulin in it. She took a pump. Like she was ready, put it in her backpack. It was like 2 weeks later after she was there. And I was like, are you still carrying insulin to class? And she goes, oh no, I stopped doing that.
I was going to say, that's going to get old real quick.
Yeah.
That's obnoxious. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, having been at work a couple times with a site failure, I just leave insulin in my purse now and have an extra pod, like an opened one.
Okay.
And it's been fine.
Yeah. I mean, in a regular life, like you just, I've talked about on here before, like when we leave the house, there's like a distance that I think of. Like if we're at least this far away, bring it with you. If you're at something that you can't like just stop doing and you'd have to go home and come back again, bring it with you. But I mean, if you're going up the street to go grocery shopping and your pump fails, then just go home. You know what I mean? And
go home, right? Exactly.
So you go into Penn State, the end all be all of higher education, where everything is amazing. Yeah. And what's your experience like?
In terms of diabetes?
Yeah.
Fine. Is that a good answer? So, no, I'm kidding. So, yeah, it was absolutely fine. I mean, I think the biggest issue I ran into was going low from walking so far because the campus is so big. Mm-hmm. That was definitely an issue from time to time. I probably made some poor choices with drinking, I'm sure. And then that's the biggest thing I can think of. I mean, I had some moments where it was stressful, like I remember taking an exam one time and not realizing that I had to change my pod within X amount of hours, whatever it is. And so it started beeping in the middle of an exam. And so I took it out to like, make the noise stop. And I remember being so nervous because I was like, this woman's going to think that I was cheating, because I took out a device and like
Hmm.
hit the button and put it back in my purse. So I went up to the professor afterwards and I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm a diabetic. I was not on my phone in the middle of the exam. And she was like, oh, I didn't even notice. I was like, okay, cool. So, I mean, that was most of my, experience. Any issues I had, the professors were lovely. And I think I can think of like maybe 3 times that I had to disclose to a professor about it. And that's about it. It was pretty mundane, honestly.
I remember once in high school, we went to like back to school night. I think Arden was like a freshman. We did the whole thing and tell you, I don't know, it's the song and dance the teacher does. And do you have any questions?
Right,
And I
right.
said, I do have questions. How do you think her diabetes plan's working out? And she goes, what?
Yeah.
And I said, Arden, like with her insulin pump and everything, has that all been okay? And she goes, real honest? And I said, sure. She goes, until you just mentioned it, I forgot Arden had diabetes.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's funny, you think of it as like, oh no, like she forgot. But I thought of it as like, good. Like, that's cool. Like, you mean we have it so well planned that you don't notice it at all?
I guess so. I
Yeah.
guess so. I think of it in terms of like, God forbid something happened, the teacher should have an idea. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, I
When
mean,
you're younger. But
yeah.
yeah.
And I think she knew, but like, it wasn't top of her mind. When she thought about Arden,
Right.
she didn't think about diabetes. And I
Oh,
thought,
I see what you're saying.
yeah. I'm sure if I, by the way, she had remembered it when I said it. It wasn't like she went, no, you're talking about the wrong kid. But I always thought that spoke well of the plan we had set up and about how Arden executes the plan. And, and how, to be honest, it stops being a plan very soon. It just becomes a way of life.
That's a good point as to, I think, why kids want to get rid of their diagnosis, right? When they go to college, is they don't want people thinking of that, thinking of their diabetes or what have you about them first, right? Like that's not the first thing I want anyone to think of me is that I have diabetes. It's all these other things about me. So, and I think that comes with time and age, honestly. So, to your point on that one, yeah.
Yeah. It does shine a light on the idea that, like, look, there's no doubt that I think most people don't want to be thought of as sick. Like, I think
Right.
that's just, they don't want to, and they don't want to go through the explanation about diabetes and autoimmune and, a lifelong, like, nobody wants to say that about them. They don't want to, you think it, look, you can say all you want that people need to do their job and be nice, and they do, and that's why there are rules in place. But the truth is that on an instinctual level, we are people we rank people in every situation. Like in
Mm-hmm.
every situation, we look up and we rank people pretty to ugly, powerful to weak, smart to like. It's just what happens. Like is it right? It's not right. It absolutely what happens. If you don't believe me, read Malcolm Gladwell's book about what is the one about 10,000 hours. I forget what it's called. But in the first chapter, he talks about this unconscious bias where a kindergarten teacher on day one, I'm going to get this bastardized this story a little bit probably, but identifies the attractive children, and they are kinder to them.
Yeah.
They're more forgiving of them. They treat them better. And then you go back and interview those teachers, like really, like scientifically interview them. Don't just ask them like, hey, you being nice to the blonde kid? Like, not like that, right? But like pick them apart psychologically. The teachers don't know they're doing it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely unconscious,
Mm-hmm.
subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, when your daughter gets to a certain age, they could be treated poorly by jealous people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a certain way, you're smarter, you're prettier, like whatever insecurity the teacher has, if you're the mirror image of that, like you could get treated poorly. And again, if you pulled the teacher aside and said, hey, you're being coarse to that pretty girl over there, they'd be like, no, I'm not. But talk to the girl and they'll say, no, that lady hates me. It's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Because it is interesting. Yeah. Because we all project our own crap, whatever it is, onto people without realizing it. Yeah, absolutely.
But so the key is, obviously people shouldn't do that and you should defend yourself against it. But if this is the way the world works, you can't get mired down in the fight. Like you got to find a way through, in my opinion.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm sure that's not what I'm sure any institution would say, no, our teachers shouldn't be treating you like that. And yeah, okay. But until we find a way to make people act against their own, worst enemies or angels,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be ready to live through that. Like, so that's the thing that we talked to about Arden. I said, look, I think generally speaking in 2023 at an art school, you're going to find a lot of very agreeable people, and they're not going to hold you up over you having diabetes or a need around it. But you might bump into somebody, and you're going to need to know how to artfully deal with that and not just throw the rules in their face and yell, because that person still gets to give you a grade 3 months from now too.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they'll say, oh, don't worry. Like, you're being treated very fairly. I'm like, sure. So if I hold you up in the first week and get into an argument with you about something, that's not going to affect me later moving forward. Bullshit.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, because there's a rule. Oh yeah. Rules are helping everybody, fixing the whole world. So I think that what may be most valuable, like we always talk about this, people are like, how do I get ready to send my kid to college? What about taking care of themselves? It's all obvious. You take care of it before you go. If you want your kid to know how to take care of their blood sugar in college, you practice at home. If you want them to know how to get past a teacher that's an asshole, you tell them and explain it to them and explain the world to them. And if you don't understand, if you're one of those people who's like, oh no, everything's great and this is how people should be, then you're going to be the people that get hosed sometimes, because there's like a real world and then there's the world you're hoping to live in. And, anyway.
Absolutely. No. And I think like it's a lot of, I mean, I'm not a parent, but just being a counselor, right? Like it's a lot of knowing your kid and knowing like where their areas of growth are. Right. So like for me, it was, I like to not advocate for myself at all. Right. And so that's what I had to work on. Whereas you might have kids like you were talking about earlier, like the other end of the spectrum where, they're 90 diagonal down and they're like, I'm low, I'm going to die. I can't go to class. That kid, that kid exists too,
Oh, of course.
And so I think it's a lot about like, knowing your kid or the, kids, students knowing themselves and what direction they need to push themselves in.
Well, Chrysten, you're saying it without saying it, right? Like we said, most people are great, but you might run into a teacher who's an asshole. Some of your kids might be assholes.
Right.
And you need to know that too, honestly.
Right.
Like,
there's some are going to milk it and some are going to be the polar opposite end of the spectrum, but both directions happen, right?
You're the perfect person to talk about this with, because, the diabetes space is great about giving people information, but a lot of the times the information is static and it's not always as helpful as it could be. It's like perfect world information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like set up this. I mean, look, I keep reading it to you. We did it. We did the thing. Arden is covered 6 ways from Sunday. Okay.
Right.
On paper. And then the marching orders are, if you can help it, never refer to what we did. Like
it's a catch-all baseline kind of thing.
We're trying to cover both realities. There's the real world where you live, where nobody gives a shit if you have diabetes. And there's the collegiate world where you are able to set up this accommodation. So set it up. But if you really want to succeed in life, try hard not to lean on it, because people smell that out as weakness. Like it sucks, but it's true. I mean, not everybody. Some people are very kind. By the way, I wouldn't see you as weak if you had diabetes. I don't see it.
No.
I mean, obviously my daughter has type 1. Like I don't see it that way at all. But there are plenty of people who are going to see an insulin pump on your arm and right away think, something's wrong with them.
Right.
And there are competitive people in the world that if you're not a competitive person, you don't know about. Those people will slice your throat to take a step ahead. Yeah, and they'll use anything. They don't even care what it is. They're looking to be one step ahead of the next guy. And that's a real thing too. So,
right. Sorry, I cut you off. I was going to say, right. And like those, like some people I think see it and they're like, oh, that's going to be annoying. That's going to be a problem. Like that kind of attitude towards people with diabetes, which I think is, again, like you're saying, like really slim, but people are out there like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, there are people who don't have patience for other people who are right away going to be
Right.
like, oh, this is going to be a thing. And there are people
Right.
who have already run into someone who have made it a thing. And they're like, oh, here's another one of them. You know what I mean? Like you're running up. You're also going to meet. Listen, I don't want anybody crying. You're also going to meet a lot of lovely people who are going to do what my daughter's profession is. Like, what do you got? Diabetes? That's fine. You need anything from me? No? All right, good. If you do, you let me know. Okay, good. And then blah, blah, blah. It's on its way. She'd never think of her like that again. And that's it. And like you met somebody who was cool about you taking a test. And then, you will overwhelmingly, the world's full of kind people. I think it's just true. Like overwhelmingly, most people mean well, and they are not actively out there trying to cut your throat. But there are some people that are, and those people are out there too, and they exist. So, it's 6 of 1, right? You got to decide how you're going to handle this. And the best way, in my opinion, is to be the master of your situation, really. Like as best you can, be on top of yourself. Like, don't leave it to somebody else's decision. It's, I don't know, like you don't want to go first in the home run competition at the All-Star game, Chrysten, because if you hit 19, the next guy's going to hit 20. You want to go last. So you're in control. So you can, it's on you. Right. And this is not a thing that if you can help it, you want to put on someone else. Now, if you are really taxed by this and you're the other side of this discussion where you're not going to make it without someone else's help, then I think you have to make that clear and find people who will act in good faith. And
yes,
do you know what I mean?
I do. And I think it really comes down to like, you're the expert on you, right? It's like, you're the one who lives with it every day. And you're the one who knows yourself best and how you're going to react to things, right? Like all the different variables and whatever. And so you also, exactly, like you have to recognize where it is that you need help and where, and know that like, you're the only one who can advocate for yourself the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You got to avoid having a victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's who you are right then work on that first before you throw yourself into the next situation. I don't know if I'm being clear about this, but I feel like I see a small amount of people who are like, I can't function. You have to help me. And okay, everyone, I'm for that, by the way. Like accommodations are really important. But there's a spectrum there of the accommodations that are necessary. And, for the people who genuinely need them, who have trouble functioning for reasons of like, high anxiety, depression, like things like that, a physical ailment. I don't think those people are going to be treated poorly. I think that people are going to help them and they're going to follow and it's going to go well. I'm talking about for the other people who are just, I don't know if I'm being clear. Like, I think you have to fight for yourself. And you can't just expect that things are going to be easy because you wrote it down somewhere. I think it's the argument you see online. It's the closest thing that I can say about this is one of the most argued about things online is whether or not a person with type 1 diabetes should get a pass to go through lines faster at amusement parks. I have never seen. Go ahead.
I've seen it blow up so many times. Yes.
Right.
And every time someone posts it, I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Say the word Disney so that I can watch you all fight for 2 days. Because what happens is you get these two camps. Hey, we deserve help camp, and I need help. Like, I'm not lying to you. I can't stand in this line in this heat. And the fight for yourself, be strong. It's almost like watching. It literally is the same argument around COVID when you heard people say like, just take your vitamins and don't be fat. And I'm like, well, that's not the whole story.
Right.
If you're not old and you're not heavy, you're going to be fine. And I'm like, that seems overly simplistic, but okay. And then the other side just like, help me. I don't want to help myself. And then there's everybody in between. But those two sides, it's just interesting to watch. I know it's a weird example, but to watch people, it's accommodations. Like some people do not want to be thought of as weak.
No, I don't think it's a weird example at all. I think it actually really is exactly what we're talking about, because it depends on so many things, right? It's like it depends on where you are in your diagnosis, I think, where you are currently, right? Because diabetes changes from week to, hour to hour,
Mm-hmm.
week to week, right? And I think it also really, it comes down to the question of like, I mean, the way I think of disability, right, is like we have to deal with something that some other people don't. And that's really just what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you want to like have equity, right? And level the playing field and give people with diabetes or whatever, right? What was the word I'm looking for? Shoot.
A fair shot?
Like a bit, sorry, what?
Like a fair shot?
A fair shot, yeah. So like
Yeah.
the ability and just the ability to take care of yourself is really it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that I get why people get all up in arms about it, but really, like, it's something that people with type 1 diabetes have to deal with things that people without it don't have to deal with.
Right.
Does it make it, and it's like, it doesn't, I think diabetes is a weird example though, because it doesn't affect you. Like it affects you every second of the day, but at the same time, it doesn't, right? Like it's like I don't know, what's my blood sugar right now? 108, like whatever it's called, leveled out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like right now, it's not really like I don't have to think about it right this second, but then suddenly we're low and then we have to think about it. You know what I mean? So does that make sense? Am I talking in circles?
No, you 100% make sense. I think that
Okay, cool.
I understand. Like what you're saying is a 1,000,000% right. I stand behind it. I obviously, my wife and I, put together like an ironclad ask for my daughter. And
yeah.
And so I think everyone should have that. I'm not saying otherwise. I'm also saying that you shouldn't like fall into it. Like don't fall into it like a comfy bed. Be like, oh, this is cool. I don't have to be at class on time. I'll just tell them my blood sugar was low.
Exactly.
Or I can turn this in 3 days late because, well, diabetes. And you can't argue with me because I have an accommodation. And like, because that's not good for you. Like it might get you through the class. That's not going to get you through life. You are going to get to a point where you get a job one day where you're like, I can't do this because my blood sugar is low. And your boss is going to go, well, I need someone who can do this. So you're fired or we'll move you into another, like some states can fire you for any reason. And some states would say, well, we're going to move you into a dead end job that you'll hate. And I'm going to put somebody who can get this job done in this position. And that might not be all above board. And you might not even hear it happening, but it's going to happen. Like, people run businesses to succeed, not to, you know what I mean? Like, not, it's not a place for you to sit and go, oh, I couldn't write my report today. In my opinion, put your effort into figuring out how to not let your blood sugar get low all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right. It can happen. Like, I mean, even like as an adult, right? Like I can think of maybe a couple times I had to go into work late in whatever 5 years.
Sure.
That I'm like, I'm sorry. I cannot, I'm really wrestling with this low. I'm going to be a few minutes late. Right. But if I did that every day, that's not going to fly.
Right. They'd be like, Chrysten doesn't come to work. The reasons, the reasons almost aren't important. I saw a friend of mine. Why do simple words leave me? A person who works with them. What is a person who works with you? A colleague. Jesus, my God. And so,
colleague, yeah.
Yeah. A friend of mine has this colleague who has a fairly bad like anxiety issue. Mm-hmm. And they'll say like, this person hasn't been in work for 3 months. And like, I'm all for their health and everything, but we're behind significantly now because of this. And so they bring in another person to, help carry the load, and it starts going well. And then a month later, the person wants to come back to work and they're like, I want my job back now. And they're like, well, someone else is doing it now. We give you a different job, and then the person's all upset. They're like, well, you didn't hold my job for me. And they're like, no, we held your job. This is your job still. But you're not involved in this part of it anymore.
Right.
And I'm like, what, they were mad? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, because everyone just sees their own side. The employee's not thinking about the business, and the business is doing what they're legally supposed to do. And at the business level and in the human level, people have a ton of compassion and empathy for the colleague. And so like everybody's, And there's an example where the person just can't, there's nothing they can do about it. But if their anxiety was a low blood sugar because they don't know how to bolus for dinner, but we could teach you how to bolus for dinner, then let's put some effort into that and keep you out of this mishigash, which is Yiddish. And I don't want to go into what it means right now, but it's a big mess. Okay. Like you don't want to, do you know the word?
I do.
What, aren't you Catholic?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say you, by the way, not to generalize, but you look Catholic. Your name is Catholic.
I was going to say, you could tell I'm Catholic. Come on.
Yeah. You're like out of
you could tell
a handbook.
It's the anxiety.
Yeah. It's the anxiety. By the way, trying to look up the Yiddish word, I mistyped it and came up with a completely different word. So I can't do it for you right now. Now I want to find it. I got it. All right. It's Yiddish. Mishigas. Craziness, senseless behavior, activity. Synonyms are, of course, like foolery, indulgence, lunacy, tomfoolery. I'm not saying that your thing is tomfoolery. I'm saying that if you can avoid this, then freaking avoid it. And
right.
and if you can't, then right on. Let's lean on it and get you into a position where you can, because the playing field should be level. Like I'm behind that 100%. By the way, there are plenty of people who are not behind that idea.
Oh no, I know. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So they're going to be in the world too. And there are people who are just going to see life as a race. And if you can't run as fast as them, then you lose. And that's that. So I don't see it that way. I do think you deserve, a level playing field. And
just not to get beat up by, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, I'll sit down and chill a minute and then come back, I don't know. I kind of think of it that way.
You don't want to graduate from college and feel like you just fought the Second World War.
Right.
Like, I went to college. It was a valuable experience for me. I had a reasonable time. Yeah. And it didn't feel like somebody was fighting against you constantly. But, not that has anything to do with this, but other people, I was making this point to someone last night. I hope my son doesn't mind if I share this. But he's got his first job and he's telling me some stories about how it's going. And it's going well. He's being recognized, and they're teaching him next level things where he sees that some of the people he came in with are not being taught these things. And so everything to him is indicating that he's doing well, you know what I mean? And he tells me the story and I said, it sounds like you're doing well. And he goes, I don't know. And I went, wait, what? He goes, I don't know. It seems like it, but I'm not sure. And I really thought about that. And I realized it was from growing up playing baseball, where it's not always about how good you are. Sometimes it's about if that kid's parents made a donation to a building, or if that guy's dad is a coach or owns the training facility you work at, or is the neighbor of a guy. Like you have the politics in kids sports is insane. And it goes right through high school, and you think, oh, I'll make it to college. It won't exist there. Bullshit. There, it's just about money. You know what I mean? It's and so what I realized is that my son has been taught that it doesn't matter how good he does. There could be an unseen force stopping him. A thing that he can't possibly know exists until the day he walks out on the field and says, why is that person playing? That doesn't make any sense. And then you stand. And so, and it's following him into his adult life.
That's interesting. Because when you said that initially, I was thinking the transition from being in school to having your first job, I think is tough also because in school you're graded on things and you're constantly getting feedback. And then you go into the working world and you're like, does anyone want to give me an A for this email that I wrote? No? Okay.
No, I think my competitiveness runs through my children. So they're trying to win.
Right.
He's at his job trying to win because he sees it as an ability to get a different job and to win at that job so that he can, he does see the world, to some degree. That he also, by the way, isn't a person who would do something that he doesn't enjoy. He turned down a really, I'm going to go as far as say lucrative offer to do a thing that he just didn't jive with.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, huh, I was really proud of him. He turned down an opportunity, try to imagine a 6-figure opportunity out of college, because
As like a 22-year-old?
yeah, he ideologically did not align with what the job would have been.
Wow.
And he said, I would rather make less money than do that.
Hmm.
So I was very proud of him then.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up broke. I would have, I would have done anything for that money. I would have been like, yeah, it's fine. Kill puppies? Sure. Like, you know, no, I wouldn't have done that. But you know what I mean? Like he was just like, no, I don't. He's like, I don't see myself being involved in that. And I was like, okay. He goes,
Wow, good for him.
Yeah.
Wow, what a proud dad moment.
Yeah, right.
I think when I was like 22, I would have had principles, but now I'm like, nah, I would have taken them. Now I'm so broke.
Pay me. Well, maybe that. But what I also took from that was that he feels safe.
Yes.
You know, which I was also comfortable with. But then, like I said, you get to this next thing. And why am I telling you this story of my son, like going, I don't know, I guess I'm doing okay. It's because the system can sometimes work against you. And it sometimes will be in ways you see, and sometimes it'll be in ways you can't see, but you will feel it afterwards. And and people don't deserve that, especially if it's around a medical thing. That should not happen. And that's why you set one of these things up. So anyway, I think I've made my point at this point, Chrysten. I don't know.
No, I think you did. No, absolutely. It's just, you know, it's just in case. It's like a just in case plan is how I really think of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want people the vast majority of people I've interacted with have been lovely about it. Quite honestly, like even bosses and coworkers and whatever, they've been absolutely lovely. I actually had a boss at my first job out of college. I was at a high school, so we had to teach as well as counsel. And I went so low and I was like, listen, I'm really sorry. I was like, can you watch my class for a few minutes? I got to sit. And she was so lovely. She was like, yeah, no problem. She watched my class. And so I went back in, however many minutes later, and I'm teaching, and my boss comes back into my class, and I'm like, what's she doing here? And she hands me a juice box. And I was like, that was so nice. Like, so I talked to her about it afterwards, and she was like, I just thought about like what you go through, and I thought what I needed in that moment would have been a juice. And so I just wanted to bring you a juice. And I was like, that was amazing, right?
Way to
like,
go.
So,
yeah, thank you.
She was so, so sweet. And that's been my experience with most people have been so lovely. But every once in a while, you get an asshole. That's the world, right?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Right.
Listen, I feel like I feel like I'm a downer here. But I want to say that I agree with you. The great many people that Arden has intersected with have been terrific. And and in the vague time, few times that she's had a problem, no one has pushed back. And I think that you have to look a little bit about who you are in the situation too. Like when Arden's had a real problem, even though it can't be substantiated, nobody has said to her, I don't believe you, because she's a person who generally doesn't take advantage of it and doesn't seem like somebody who would try to take advantage of their situation. And so the person who interacts with her says, yeah, that's fine. And it's been she told her story about having a seizure after her prom, right? And one of the first things she did when she got her wits about her was to email a teacher and say, hey, I just had a seizure and I don't think I'm going to have this thing in tomorrow. And the guy
that cracked me up.
Yeah, and the guy's like, "Why are you why are you beginning to tell me?" And I think that's why she didn't have a problem, because she's a person who, after coming out of a seizure, thought about her responsibilities, and then the teacher knows that about her, and so there's no problem. And it is as much about how you present yourself as it is about anything else. If you come off as a problem to people all the time, then that's going to be their first thought when you intersect with them. They're going to be like, oh, here this comes again, and so it is a little on you to,
it is.
Yeah. That's how you put yourself into the world. And I mean, I think people, when they see these topics, what they want is like, give me a list of things to say, you know what I mean? Or do, or write down. And a lot of times it's not that easy. Like a lot of times there's work for you to do. And I will, like I said, I'll share this document. My wife put so much effort into it. It's so clear. People could add from it, subtract from it. They could use it as it is, however they would want to do.
Mhm.
But, you know, little things like Wi-Fi, here's what they don't tell you at college. You're paying them all the money in the world and they didn't spend any money on their Wi-Fi system. It sucks.
Oh, the Wi-Fi is horrible. Yeah. Everywhere I've ever been.
Yeah. Terrible Wi-Fi at college. Food is bad nutritionally.
Oh, don't get me started.
Right.
I distinctly, side note, I remember I used to eat this particular sandwich when I was in college. And then I noticed one day, I was like, oh, the nutrition facts are on here. I don't have to guess the carbs or whatever. I called my mother, like, borderline crying. I was like, do you know how much fat is in this sandwich I've been eating? Like every other day?
Yeah.
I was like, what is going? Yeah, it's not. The food was rough, definitely.
The food's bad. Like, it's nutritionally. Like, it might even taste good. You might be like, oh, it's amazing here. But it's not going to be, like, clean. And it's going to impact your blood sugar.
Yes.
You're going to be surprised that when you have a medical issue at school, they're going to tell you to go off campus to urgent care and take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. There's no school nurse sitting around waiting to help you. So that doesn't exist. And even housing. Like, I'll tell you, my son was sick for his whole freshman year, and I think it was because of his housing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Just dusty and dirty.
That actually, sorry, that brings to mind that there was one episode with the girl, she like went up to each of her professors and said that she was a diabetic or something. And they were all just like, okay. Yeah. It was the way she told the story was so funny. Like, she was just like trying to be like all proactive and they were like, we don't care.
I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. Poor thing.
Yeah, because people don't understand. Like, half the podcast exists because people don't understand diabetes, down to the people who you're sometimes counting on for medical help.
Oh, yeah.
And so to just go to like I know people want to look at somebody and go, oh, that's a college professor. It's a person. You know what I mean?
It's just a dude.
Yeah. And you know, it's your doctor, a cop, your college professor, the lady at the grocery store. They're all just people. Likely 80% of them, if someone would just give them a free bag of money once a month, would not show up at this thing.
Exactly.
You know, and you're like, I have diabetes, and they're probably thinking, my wife cheats on me. What do you want? Like, right. You know what I mean? Like, I got my own problems, and I don't like this job, and I'm doing it. Like, you really like put yourself in other people's shoes sometimes. Like, you're coming to them and giving them more to do.
Yeah.
And you're not offering them more. You're not like, hey, great news, I have diabetes, but your pay is going up $3 an hour. They'd be like, oh, well, right on. Tell me about your hypoglycemia. You know, but you're just saying, like, here's another thing to be responsible for, to be worried about, and you're not going to make another penny. And so there's certain people are going to hear that and be like, oh, God, leave me alone. You know, and I'm just telling you, like, everybody's not Mr. Rogers.
No, they're not. And honestly, sometimes it's better if they're not. Sometimes if they're just, okay, cool. That's sometimes easier, quite honestly, at least in my experience.
Go do your thing. Like,
like no one cares.
I joke about this sometimes. There's that guy that's like, really, I don't know who, obviously I don't listen to his podcast, but like, in the zeitgeist, I'm aware of him. He's like a Marine or something, or he was a Marine. Like, he says to people like, who's going to carry the boat or something? It's like a SEAL thing. I don't know, obviously, Chrysten. I don't pick things up. His message is, I'll do it. Right? Like, hard things need to be done. I'll take care of it. And
I see.
Yeah, like, I'm not counting on you or you or you. I'll carry the boat. Like, that idea. I guess the boats get carried somewhere. Again, if you were counting on me, we probably would have lost every major war. I don't know the ins. I don't know the ins and outs of this. Okay,
carrying the boat.
Yeah, but apparently, if a boat needs to be carried somewhere, this guy's going to pick it up over his head and take off with it. I'm going to stand in the back and go, "Hey, my knee hurts. Can you guys get this?" So, but the point is that it's that idea of like, something needs to be done. I'm going to do it. Not, I'm going to wait for someone else to do it, or I'm going to bring them a note that explains why I don't have to do it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and if you're in a situation where, I don't know, the boat needs to be carried and you're not a good person to carry the boat, perhaps look for a different situation. You know, like, right. I'm not saying, you know, give up on something because it's hard, but I mean, if there's a reality where you don't, like, if you're a square peg and you're trying to get into a round hole, like, eventually you're going to have to realize that. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Is being honest a bummer, Chrysten?
No, not at all. No, I think this is all like the actual reality of what it looks like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it no, I don't think it's a bummer. It is what it is. And not to mention like everybody, so many people, everybody has their shit, you know? Like it's like I can't tell you how many kids have this disorder and this and the other thing, right? Like diabetes is just one of them, you
Hmm.
know?
One person said one time, like I I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I think that was the example, and
Hmm.
they were kind of like, but I have diabetes now, so I can't do it. And they were pissed, and I get them being pissed. Like right,
Yeah.
it's incredibly disappointing and like life altering and angering, and it's not like, don't get me wrong, I understand all of that. And I also understand why the government might not want you flying a $30 million jet through the air.
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah.
makes sense to me. And so
Right.
like not fair, but practical. You know,
Right.
and so and now there's better technology, and you're seeing people be pilots like for major airlines who have type 1 and stuff like that, and that's all great. Like if there's a way to do it, that's great. But prior to that, 20 years ago, what people knew about diabetes is sometimes John passes out, but there's no CGM. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah. Like, I can't let John fly the plane. Like, John passes out sometimes. And now
Oh God,
suddenly
no.
I'm using someone's name I don't mean to use, because I think there's actually a guy named John who does this. If John, if you're listening, I didn't mean you. I tried to pick a generic name, Chrysten, and look what happened to me. But like
Poor John.
now there's this stuff, and like now suddenly it's okay. And that's amazing. It's great. But anyway, I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to defend both sides in one voice, and it gets confusing that way. But you're going to
No,
go to,
I don't think it's confusing. Like it's I mean, like, I don't know, as a counselor, like I'm always my thing I always say is it's all about balance, right? It's like, you don't want to go too far in one direction and be like, okay, little Johnny, do your, you got this, do diabetes by yourself. But you also don't want to like, you know, be super melodramatic about it, right?
yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I think it's all about balance and finding what works best for you.
People deserve support, and
Yes,
they deserve all that goes along with that. And people also should be practical. And this is
absolutely.
just my opinion. That's all. You
No,
know,
I agree. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm assuming that when you say to somebody in your profession, look, we have to find balance, in the back of your head, what you're thinking is like, you got to figure this out for yourself.
Hmm.
Like you have to
Well,
see like the reality of it and try to find your way through it.
yes. And I think, as a counselor, it's also like that thought, and I'm here to help you do that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I'm here to break it down as much as we can with you so that, to make it easier, but I tell them all the time, I'm like, you gotta meet me halfway. Like I can't do all the work for
Hmm.
you, you know?
Yeah. No.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anyway, I just think that everybody doesn't fit into every situation.
No.
And that I have sometimes seen people say, I think it's in the pursuit of the advocacy. Is that what I mean? In
Hmm.
pursuit of advocacy and proving that anyone can do anything, which I believe. It's not everybody. It's the guy. You know what I mean? It's that girl who was on the show a few months ago, her legs don't function and she's out in a wheelchair, like racing in the streets or something like that. I'm like, she's the one who does that. We all don't do that. You know what I mean? Like she's a special person in that situation. The guy that picks the boat up and runs, it's not everybody. You know what I mean? And so I like it when people like, I have been at the forefront of this for 15 years with my daughter. Every one of her 504 plans through school was incredibly detailed, but as streamlined as possible.
Hmm.
It covered her for every situation that we could think of where someone or thing or the machine might come along and mess her up. But then we steadfastly tried never to use it.
Right.
That's just how we've done it the whole time. And because you run a risk of treating someone like they can't, and then maybe it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy too, which I think,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like you have to be careful of that. You have to be careful of not to aim too low. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, because no, it does make sense. It's yeah, it's like that like learned helplessness. You don't want to like make people feel like they can't do it, but you also don't want to like I was saying with the balance before, right? But you also don't want to like, I missed the second half, but you also don't want to like leave them on their own either, right?
Sure.
Like it's
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
by the way, look how smart you are. You said learned helplessness. It's like a fancy word. I didn't know.
That one I pulled deep from the depths of somewhere.
Of
I
your
don't even
butt,
know.
right out of your butt. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
I know this one from somewhere.
It was I might have even used it wrong, so please don't.
No,
Yeah.
it made sense to me when you said it.
Did it?
I
Okay.
just love how I was just like pulling basic words out of my mouth. And you're like, yeah, learned helplessness. I'm like, oh, is that what that is?
I paid attention for like a day in college, apparently.
Well, yeah, well, you were at Penn State and watching that football in the snow and drinking. There was nothing else, right?
That is pretty much what I did, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I did pay attention to the learned helplessness lecture.
That apparently. One day you heard that thing?
That one day, yeah, I went to class.
Weren't you trapped in a valley?
Yes.
No worries about that ever?
No.
Like, what if it snowed and you were just caught there and they couldn't get food in and you all had to start eating yourselves like cannibals or something like that?
That kind of sounds like we would just drink if that happened. Yeah, if we had snow days, we would just drink all day. It was fun.
Those Penn State flags are really, they're like markers, right? People drop beer at your house. That's why they're all in front of everybody's houses.
Yeah, there's like an underground society kind of thing. And we just like, we go through the tunnels and we drink.
Penn State's one of those schools that if you drive too far away from here and you say Penn State, people will go, I don't know what you're talking about. But if you say it around here, you might think that it's Harvard.
Yeah. Oh, 1000%. You know, it's funny too. Like I'll have Penn State shirts and stuff. And if I wear it in Pennsylvania, you know how people say like, we are Penn State, right?
Mm-hmm.
But someone will just say we are at me. And I'm like, hello, what? Cause I forget, like, cause I don't live in Pennsylvania anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that.
We
Very
are
alarming.
I'd be blowing like a rape whistle. I mean, get away from me. Like, I don't know what's happening. Crazy people.
But it's like, it's always when you forget you're wearing the shirt. So I'm like, are you talking to me? Like, what's happening? I'm so awkward too. So
You're so awkward. I've never seen people more fervently supportive of a college before in mind. And sometimes people who didn't even go there.
Oh yeah. 1000%.
That freaks me out. I got to be honest. That one freaks me out. Like, you have a Penn State flag, you and nobody in your family went to Penn State. I'm like, oh, okay.
just don't, that's one of those, like, if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing.
Please. Everyone can beat you just fine. Penn State makes low draft pick running backs, and used to make offensive linemen. I don't even know if they do that anymore. So
we haven't been so good the past couple of years. I don't know.
Did you go to those games?
Yeah.
Did you care about football at all?
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
It wasn't just another drinking venue. It was like you cared about football.
Oh no, we cared very much. It was also a drink. It was, well, that's a whole nother story. The drinking is a little alarming sometimes, but that's me as an adult now.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's my opinion as an adult who has now sent 2 kids to college. If what you're worried about is, let me look. If what you're worried about is the ability to take breaks during class, including during test projects, to self-treat or to attend to diabetes devices, for example, an insulin pump, I think what your concern should be more about Molly. You should write one of these papers for your kid. It should say, "Hey, don't do Molly," don't drink so much that you forget where you are for a day and a half. Like, these are the things that. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Like, it's a little. I don't know. I'm always interested.
Yeah, we could probably talk about that for another 2 hours, honestly. But yeah, it's there's dangers involved in all these things.
Well, do me a favor for a second here. I've taken you over time already, but do me a favor here for a second here. Tell the people who don't know, like, really, how many days a week did you drink?
3-ish, I would average out, I would say.
Okay.
Sometimes it was 4.
You smoked the devil's weed at all while you were there at Penn State?
No.
No? Anything else? Take a Xanax?
No.
A little bit of Coke, Chrysten?
No.
No? All right, so you were pretty good. Now, all those things I just mentioned, did you see them going on around you?
Oh, sure did.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember the first time you thought, oh, wow, people do heroin? That's interesting.
That that I didn't run into.
You didn't run into that? Look at
No, but
you.
it was
Fancy.
alarming though. I was like, what? Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't dabble. Honestly, and quite honestly, because of the diabetes, I was like, I don't know what that's going to do to that, and let's not play
Mm-hmm.
that game.
But cocaine's pretty big in colleges, right?
Yes, I've heard that.
You've heard that. Good. You keep
I've
talking like that because you're in the world now. I understand.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's not just like, I don't know. It's not making sure you have a mini refrigerator that won't that won't freeze insulin.
There's bigger fish to fry than that.
I remember sitting in an orientation meeting for my son when he was a freshman. And this parent, who obviously was very anti-drinking, said, what are you going to do to make sure my kid doesn't drink? And the guy at the front of the room was like, nothing.
Yeah, what?
And that was like it. It was like, what? You think we're going to, what are you talking about? Like, we're not in charge of that. And the woman was like mortified. She's like, wait, no one's going to like make sure? And he's like, no. He's like, they're 18. It's illegal to drink, obviously, but we don't police them.
Right.
And that's what I heard him say was, if they can get it to their room and keep it quiet, that's that. And
pretty much.
Yeah, she was like, oh, okay. And then this lovely woman stepped up to the lectern, and that's when she gave the stats that I know, which she's like, look, if it makes you feel any better, it's about 50-50. Half the kids will come here and leave and never drink once. And the woman did not look comforted by like she knew that the only thing standing between her child and obliteration was active monitoring. And she just walked out so defeated. And
that poor woman. She probably saw her life flash before her eyes.
I felt bad for her. I also know people who have had to pull their kids out of college because they couldn't stop drinking.
Yeah, no, it is really serious.
Yeah. It's not, it's no like, anyway, I don't know if the fish are bigger to fry, but there are other fish to fry. You probably should think about all that. And I'm being very serious from my perspective on the diabetes front. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that some people listen to this podcast and think that guy just took care of his daughter's diabetes and she's going to be in so much trouble when and by the way, that's not true. You weren't listening to the whole thing. We were very slowly giving Arden's care off to her for years so as not to overwhelm her. She got there and she really like picked the mantle up and she's running with it. Like, she's doing a really good job.
Oh, I'm so happy. I was vicariously worried. Not worried that just because it's new,
Mm-hmm.
But as I was listening, I was like, she's got it. Come on. It's like, come on, Arden.
Does it feel like, this is interesting. Does it feel oddly as a person who listens to the podcast that like if Arden succeeds, then that makes all of this okay? And what if she failed? Like, would it feel terrible if the kid who everything I know went off to school and was like, blah, my A1C's 10? And like would that be defeating as a listener, do you think?
For me personally, no, but I'm also older. I think, I don't know. I think, well, I'm also kind of like a little hippy dippy, but like, I don't know. I think like everybody kind of goes through their own journey with it. You know what I mean? So if like maybe her journey was like, hypothetically, like she kind of screwed up for a couple of years and then got back together. Hey,
right. I will tell you that from my perspective, I've always been like, this is definitely what's going to happen. Like, she's just going to be like, woo! and I'm going to be on here going, I don't know what to do. Like, but it worked out. And I don't want to just say it worked out like, hey, like I threw it up to God and it worked, we were very purposeful and about it, like had a very long range view of it. I've never been a person who's like throwing things on her all at once and be like, here, you take care. Like your mom was like, nah, she's got it. Don't worry. And you're like, wait, what? But we did that very slow. There's teaching moments. We've set her up with technology as best we can that it's going to help her. And there are days, as much effort as I see her putting into it, and I really do see a ton of effort from her, I still think, I don't know, without an algorithm, I mean, this would be a shit show. Like
really?
Sleeping. You know what I mean? Like sleeping.
Yeah.
Like she has maybe a low like once or twice a month at night. And they're manageable. Like, I'll text her and I'll be like, hey, are you aware of this? And she'll be like, yeah, I just did something about it. And she also, this is interesting, at home will not wake up if her blood sugar's low. at college has never not woken up for her low blood sugar.
Ah, interesting.
Like she said, I can feel it in my sleep. And I wonder if that wasn't like a little bit of the thrusting of that responsibility for her. Like if she didn't look at that and think, well, who's going to carry the boat? I guess it's me. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, so
right.
I should figure out who actually said that. So I'm not like, you want to Google it with me for a second? Who?
I mean, yeah. Well, I'm curious. So you mean the person actually physically carried a boat?
Well, I don't think it's like it's not like the SS Minnow. You know what I mean? Like it's smaller than that. They're like, all right, hold on. It's David Goggins. He's got an incredibly popular podcast. He's written books. I obviously don't know a lot about him, but he's like a motivational speaker. Is this from, or is it Cameron Haynes? I don't know. There's a lot of these motivational guys who could pick me up and break me in half if they needed to. I mean, there's t-shirts that says, who's going to carry the boat? So.
Not me.
Well, you're like, get out of here. Do you want to, like, the boat? It looks like hold on a second. This is like, we're by the way, for people listening, we're done now. You can go if you want to.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's like, so like one of those really heavy, like inflatable, like 6 guys fit in it thing. But
okay.
But it looks like it wouldn't split if you hit it with an axe.
Okay.
And it looks really heavy. So I don't know.
I can't stop envisioning like Hercules, the cartoon character,
holding up a boat
like
by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not this.
That's all I can picture in my head every time you said it. And whenever you said who's going to carry the boat, I was like, I don't know, but I would definitely get someone else to do it for me. Like,
I mean, a guy that I call or pay or, well,
hopefully.
But I think that if they heard that, they'd be like, yeah, that's why we're here, by the way, because, you know, when the shit hits the fan, we're the only ones that are going to show up. And by the way, I think they're right, because I've always maintained that if I was on the Mayflower, the first body of water we got to, I'd be like, we could just live here. It's fine. I don't know how to get on the other side of that. This is good right here. But yeah. Oh yeah. These are like big, heavy, like boats.
Oh,
that's
I see. Okay. Yeah. I've never heard this before. This is new. I'm going to Google it later.
Yeah. It's, for me, I've only obviously ever heard it like fourth hand, quite obviously. To me, that's what it means. Like, to me, it means like, I have to do this. Like, if no one else is going to do this, I'm going to do it. And
unless it's me, and then I'm never going to do it.
No, but you did it though, didn't you? You did you carried your own boat, right?
The metaphorical boat, but the physical boat, I'm definitely getting someone else to do it.
Yeah, but you carried your own. I think the boat is like, you know, doesn't have to be a boat. Why are you giving me
I'm totally
at the
kidding.
end? I know you are, but I mean, like, why are you busting my balls now? Like, we've been doing this
for
like an hour
and a half. Like, I know. I was just like, you know what? I was being nice and I was professional and shit. And now
you're like, this is where I'm putting my flag in the sand. Damn it. I can't pick up a boat. Like, why are you being so literal?
Just to mess with you a little. I had to mess with you a little.
Oh my God. That's how my wife fights. Don't do that. It gives me agita. I'm like, oh God.
My bad. I'm sorry.
I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get literal. That's not what we were doing.
Well, I had to full circle. You told me about that in the beginning. So
yeah, I know. Also, I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem.
Nothing better storytelling than bringing it all back around at the end.
Yeah,
so,
sometimes.
Right. Is there anything we didn't, by the way, what in the hell did you want to come on here and talk about? Just this?
I guess so. Yeah, pretty much. I don't even know. I was all like feeling adamant about it in the middle of our summer program, and now I forget. So hopefully it was good. I don't know.
Well, I think that's interesting too, that at some point when you were in the thick of it, it felt like life or death. And now 6 months later, you're like, I don't know, just don't be a dick. It'll be all right.
Pretty much. And you know what's funny? Because I was like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And then I was like, someone actually posted in the Facebook group. They were like, what advice do you have on transitioning to college? And I was like, oh, okay, this is still relevant. Awesome.
Oh, it's always relevant. But the advice, listen, can I give you may I? Anything you think of that you need advice for, here's the advice. Use common sense. There you go. It doesn't make it doesn't make a good podcast, but just use your common sense. And if you're at a loss for common sense, ask a friend. And if things are always going wrong for you, assume you don't have the greatest common sense. And
the universe is out to get you.
yeah, by the way, the universe isn't out to get you. You make bad decisions. It's not your fault.
I love talking to people like that though, when you're just like, and it's just like stupid decision after stupid decision. You're like, oh goodness.
Like
gracious.
a problem comes up and you go, that's what you think to do when you hear that? Like, wow.
Right.
Okay. Like no judgment. Like, I don't know how you got here, but like, that's not, I mean, it's not just my opinion. Like that's nowhere near right. I can see where that's going to lead you poorly. And listen, I had a private conversation with the lady that helped us set up Arden's thing. And very privately, she said, like, some of these people are just, I don't want to say. And she wouldn't, she did one of those like, humana. Like, I don't want to say what I'm thinking here, but a lot of these people aren't really in the situation they think they're in. And some people, she said, just want to be angry. And she said, and some people just want to assert a dominance over the situation. Like, you have to do this because I have XYZ. And these are the rules and this is your job and do what I say. She said, there's a lot of that. And I'm sure. Yeah, we got done and she thanked us.
Really?
Yeah. She said, this is the easiest my job's ever been in my entire life, she said.
Yeah, I would imagine they spend a lot of time like weeding through information, and you did it for them.
But the vibe from her was she spends a lot of her time with very difficult people. Don't we all? Yeah, well, that's basically. And by the way, not a lovelier person will you meet, and genuinely concerned for everyone, and had a child of their own who had needs. And it's their own accommodations. And so she was genuinely empathetic and sympathetic and motivated. Like, she was great at her job, but she's still trying to tell you that there are a lot of people in here just being a pain in the ass for no real reason.
Right.
And I was like, oh, it's interesting. So she's like, so thank you for not only setting up a great plan that I have no trouble putting into action, but for not being in here basically asking, for a Ferris wheel. My baby needs something unreasonable, or you know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah.
Someone to carry Arden around in a boat.
What we needed 4 guys. Arden wants to approve of them first. And they should be shirtless constantly, she said. Isn't that interesting? And she wants them to put her in a rubber boat and carry her from class to class. And you have to do this because she could get low if she walks too much. And,
exactly.
And there was nothing out of bounds or crazy or over the top that was asked for. Just, Anyway. All right. We're done. You were great. Thank you. I talk too much, but the fuck are you going to do?
No problem.
Hold on a second. Let's thank Chrysten for coming on the show today and sharing all of her knowledge and her story. And of course, we're going to thank Omnipod, makers of the Omnipod 5 and the Omnipod DASH, omnipod.com/juicebox. Use my links, support the podcast. And Dexcom was a sponsor today. So let's say thank you to them for making that Dexcom G7 and the G6. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Head over now and get started today with 2 amazing devices, ones that we've been using here forever and ever. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Dexcom, Omnipod, and all the sponsors. If you click on my links, you are supporting the show. A diabetes diagnosis comes with a lot of new terminology, and that's why I've created the Defining Diabetes series. These are short episodes where Jenny Smith and I go over all of the terms that you're going to hear living with diabetes, and some of them that you might not hear every day. From the very simple bolus up to feet on the floor. Don't know the difference between hypo and hyper? We'll explain it to you. These are short episodes. They are not boring. They're fun. And they're informative. It's not just us reading to you out of the dictionary. We take the time to chat about all of these different words. Maybe you don't know what a Kussmaul respiration is. You will when you're done. Ever heard of a glycemic index and load? Haven't? Doesn't matter. You'll know after you listen to the Defining Diabetes series. Now, how do you find it? You go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up top to the menu, and click on Defining Diabetes. You'll be able to listen right there in your browser, or you'll see the full list of the episodes and be able to go into an audio app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and listen to them at your pace. Download them into your phone and listen when you can. The Defining Diabetes series is made up of 51 short episodes that will fast forward your knowledge of diabetes terminology.